In the past few years, the US population has seen some pretty serious epidemic scares with Ebola and Zika, two diseases that either don't have a cure or can't be prevented. We've seen the World Health Organization and UN health agencies criticized for their slow responses, and the CDC issue mere travel guidances because, at the end of the day, it's really all they could do. This has left many people wondering, are we prepared for an epidemic? In order to fully grasp our emergency preparedness, it's important that we first look at Operation Dark Winter. Operation Dark Winter was a simulated bioterror attack that took place in 2001. Several private and public organizations in the US came together to determine whether or not we were prepared for a massive outbreak, or at the very least, try to determine the impacts a pandemic would have. The game started off when the CDC in Oklahoma City confirmed a smallpox outbreak, which had apparently started somewhere in Southwest Asia. During the 13 days of simulation, the disease spread like wildfire to 25 states and 15 other countries. The 14 participants of the game and 60 observers discussed everything from the public health response and lack of adequate supply of smallpox vaccines to the roles of federal and state government and the civil liberties associated with quarantine and isolation. 5 representatives from the National Press Corps even had a press conference with the president. So let's just say it was taken pretty seriously. The reason why they chose smallpox out of all diseases is because of how terrifying it really is. It bears a 30% case fatality rate. There is no treatment, and it can be spread from one person to another by merely talking. The only way to control a smallpox epidemic is through vaccination and isolation. In 1979, the World Health Organization announced that smallpox had been eradicated and recommended that all countries cease vaccination. Following this, the US, along with Russia, stored smallpox samples for scientific research purposes. But this has caused controversy due to a fear of an accidental outbreak. If a smallpox epidemic were to happen in the US, we would only have 7 to 12 million vaccines for a population of over 320 million people. The stock of the vaccine can't be immediately replaced either, since all vaccine production activities were dismantled after 1980, and renewed vaccine production could take as long as 36 months. The simulation of Operation Dark Winter shows us just how vulnerable we are in the face of an epidemic. Some of the findings they drew from the simulation include the inherent chaos that ensues and the challenges of dealing with the media and threat to national security interests. But the two most serious and unfortunate challenges deal with our current ability to mobilize our healthcare capabilities in the US. Dark Winter found that our current organizational structures and capabilities are not built for an epidemic of this sort. Major blind spots exist between different levels of government and between government and the private sector. These disconnections could seriously impede situational awareness and compromise the ability to limit loss of life, suffering, and economic damage. Further, the US doesn't have the ability to speed up healthcare and public health systems, nor do the pharmaceutical and vaccine industries. This limitation could result in hospitals being overwhelmed and becoming inoperable. Worse than that, it could impede public health agencies' analysis of the scope, source, and progress of the epidemic. This simulation was conducted back in 2001. Hopefully, 15 years after observing the findings of Operation Dark Winter, our institutions have taken measures to mitigate the damage that an epidemic would cause.